Okay.
Now, I'm not sure it's connected. I'll go check.
Okay.
Warming up.
Yeah, it seems. Oh, but it's black one.
Oh no. I'm checking. It's showing on YouTube.
Okay.
I can hear the humming.
Yeah, which means my headphones didn't load the number. All these gadget errors. Okay, at least it's working. Notes.
It did have a brief black moment.
Technically complicated night.
Hey,
Hello,
Karen.
Oh, I'm super logged out of my stuff because I had to restart.
Yeah, but that's okay. Just warming up. We'll officially start in a few minutes.
Everything's so sluggish. Okay, well, connections seem to be working now. What a weird night. At first, the camera didn't want to load at all. But I had meetings earlier, so the camera was technically working fine.
Yeah.
So I had to just employ the classic troubleshooting step of restart.
Works though.
But then it ruined everything I had set up.
All the captions we prepared.
Like all the windows were open and stuff.
So just warming up, then we'll officially start in a few. Today's episode seems appropriate because it is also my sister's birthday.
Okay, how does that connect?
Tracy Island.
Oh, okay. I'll accept this. This is suitable. That's fair. That's fair.
I'm starting in 1 minute. 1 minute. So we are 6 years away from
The setting.
From the group existing in the real world. Hey, Andre.
Hello, hello.
All right, 9:15. I guess we could start.
Okay. Oh, wait. Let me just change this to. Nope.
Oh, I thought you were going to load something.
I did. I changed the caption to the title caption instead of the waiting caption.
This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, a little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted, not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us, we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. Today is our 98th episode, and we are spending the next 30 minutes talking about
The Thunderbirds. And the very few people watching tells me of the non-popularity of this franchise. But to be fair, it's a little obscure.
Thunderbirds is, Thunderbirds that we are tackling tonight touches on many things.
Yes.
From the show, which is a super marionette show, having
Super marionation.
yeah, puppetry combined with miniatures and the like to tell a story, to the board game that was created, inspired by the show, by the same people who do Pandemic.
Yeah, well, the same designer,
Mhm.
right? So, so let's do a quick overview of what the heck is the Thunderbirds to begin with. I like how Wikipedia tags it as a British science fiction television series.
Mhm.
So we don't stress that it's a children's show or that it's a cartoon,
Mhm.
because it's not. It was a puppet show. But no, it was really a straight up science fiction series. It's actually quite serious. I mean, it was definitely an all ages
Mhm.
sort of thing, but it was meant for children. It was created by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, who sort of have a legacy of a lot of super marionation shows
Mhm.
and other things like with a strong military theme. Karen mentions the marionettes look a little creepy. Admittedly, they have that puppet quality to them.
They do fall under the uncanny valley because they tend to have very expressive, realistic eyes.
Mm,
They have, downright realistic outfits and fashion sense because they're puppets. Their clothes are made with actual cloth, with actual outfits, and many of them even have the mouth moving when they talk.
yeah, there's a little flap.
Which again adds that creepiness to them. I mean, it's that weird level wherein the closer you are to something that is trying to be real, the weirder and more uncomfortable it feels. Which is why a stick figure drawing seems fine, but then computer animation like the Polar Express makes you feel they're weird.
Mm. And and to be fair, so this was not like the Andersons' first venture. Before it was Stingray, which was like a
Yes.
submarine thing, and then but Thunderbird I think is the one that a lot of people remember
Mhm.
because the characterization was so strong. But it's funny looking back that it actually only ran for 2 years, from 1965 to 1966, and there are only apparently 32 episodes, including anniversary specials,
Mhm.
for this little show. And yet, I am a fan. Um, I can't even remember how I watched Thunderbirds. It
Mhm.
was one of those things that you would just find playing like on one of the local channels in the middle of the afternoon. And it was, it was just whatever it clearly felt like filler content.
Mhm.
Like they had purchased it probably in a lot of different shows, and then they just ran the episodes in the afternoon.
Mhm.
And I was just fascinated because, well, one, puppets. It wasn't stop motion; they were really marionettes,
Yeah.
like wandering around. And then the whole military vehicle theme. I mean, my love for robots runs deep, and shows of this nature with it kind of felt like a Star Trek setup, but on Earth, because
Mhm.
they were an organization. They had specialized vehicles, and they had this lofty mission of saving people. We should talk about what the show is about.
So the show features the Tracy family,
Yes.
well, a group that has devoted themselves to the cause of rescuing people all over the world because sometimes no one else can do it but them. They live on an island known as Tracy Island, of course.
Of course, because they're a family that can afford making amazing vehicles. They own their own island.
And each of them has a specific vehicle, or Thunderbird specifically, that they tend to use.
Yeah, so that's funny that the Thunderbirds per se are the vehicles,
Mhm.
and the organization is International Rescue.
Yes.
So they're not, and they're not. The Thunderbirds aren't even their call sign. It's not like a Voltron thing. It's just like people know them as International Rescue. So it's sort of like Firefly and Serenity, where the show. Wait, was the show was Firefly?
Yeah.
But then the ship was Serenity.
Yes.
So that kind of a distinction, and yeah. So their main quirk was that they had these specialized vehicles developed by their dad, but they were all the dedicated rescue vehicles that did not have any weapons whatsoever. So the kind of rescuing they would do is normally like from natural disasters, like the volcano is blowing up,
earthquakes, volcanoes.
the experimental plane is not going to land safely.
The laboratory under the ground or deep in the bowels of the earth is now in trouble, and someone has to go down and rescue the people, or even cases wherein sabotage happens because. Of course, when you have a group that is heroically and altruistically trying to help the world, you will, of course, need a villain that has, I guess, to some degree, the same technological expertise.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk briefly. We should have brought them out. But what are the Thunderbirds per se? The actual vehicles. So there are 5 of them. And actually, I can run with some of the boxes. So.
Yeah, they don't show them all.
Yeah, okay. Then we can use this box. We'll use the main box.
And part of the reason we wanted to feature the show is there is a game, as we mentioned.
But we couldn't just talk about the game kind of without like stressing, what's going on. So I can just use the lid first as an example. So your 5 Thunderbirds. Oops, wrong way. All right. So Thunderbird 1 is a blue and silver hypersonic rocket plane. So it's fast response. He flies very fast. That's like the stress of Thunderbird 1. Thunderbird 2, which is like my favorite, is the transport one. So he's slower, but he carries all these different little pod vehicles and stuff to help with rescue missions. And he can carry Thunderbird 4. Thunderbird 3 is an orange rocket that can travel to space, because of course they can. Thunderbird 4, which is always forgotten, is this little submarine, which can fit in the green one. And Thunderbird 5 is the least exciting because it's a space station. And sadly, we have John like just up there forever. Okay. But that's like not these are the main Thunderbird vehicles that sort of define the show. But they're not the only ones around.
The vehicles are in many ways the stars of the show, not because they solve everything, but because whenever it's time to use the vehicles, you have these beautiful beauty shots. If 90s cartoons and 80s cartoons were known for their transformation montages or their group preparing for battle moments, for Thunderbirds, it was them getting ready to leave Tracy Island and deal with a new problem.
Yeah, it's like there's 2 parts. One, you have a Voltes 5 / Voltron-esque sequence of they go to different parts of Tracy the Tracy house, where there are secret compartments that allow them to transform. But again, it's a private island. Who are they hiding from?
In their own home.
Yeah, in their own home, and they're the only ones who see each other. I mean, Granny knows that they're the Thunderbird. They're International Rescue, but they have these convoluted, like they pull the. They pull the lamps, and then it rotates, and then they go down a chute.
They slide down the
to
wall.
Different parts of Tracy Island.
They lean against the painting, which becomes the backrest for this thing that flips them upside down to slide them head first down. So down
all this tomfoolery. But yes, so then you get the Thunderbirds transforming, and then if that's not enough, then you have the countdown, which is always in the big booming voice of 5, 4. And they'll synchronize the numbers to which of the Thunderbird vehicles are part of the episode. So if it's just General 5, they'll just say 5. But then if you know that Thunderbird 4 is going to be in the mission, then they'll do a close up of Thunderbird 4 somehow in the water, but preparing to launch and things like that. So it's they knew how to celebrate those vehicles, and it's super fun. Andre's asking, what about the car? So there's more than just the primary cast of the family of the Thunderbirds. Yeah. So the pink car belongs to Lady Penelope, and we'll talk about her book in a bit. But so Lady Penelope is their London agent,
Mhm.
which is vague. It's like I don't exactly know what her job is. She's super rich. She lives in Creighton Ward Manor. She has a chauffeur named oh my god, what's the chauffeur's name? Why can't I suddenly remember? Oh no,
Ah, ah.
Parker.
Yes, Parker.
Okay. Um, she has a chauffeur, Parker, and her own souped-up vehicle, which is the Fab One,
Mm-hmm.
which is the only vehicle with guns. It's just like so. Everybody else is in these neutered rescue-only vehicles, but Lady Penelope is always like dealing with danger. So she's not just some
Mhm.
innocent woman. She's actually like their secret agent. I think she secures the deals that allow international rescue to
She
operate.
seems to be the equivalent of British intelligence in this show that features.
Yeah, she's the liaison with the different governments
Mhm.
that they're getting involved with because they rescue people all over the world. So yeah, there's Parker, and then later on there are a few other side characters. The other important one's probably Brain, who is like their tech guy who does not invent anything. They don't get like new gadgets.
Mhm.
He just maintains the Thunderbirds and then occasionally helps them think through problems. But like he's not Q in James Bond.
The pod vehicles, which are the more specialized vehicles, to the very least, become the new gadgets that if ever they do feature them.
But it's like established that they're already just there. It's just a question of which pod vehicle do you need for the mission.
Which one has been developed from way back? That
Yeah,
can be used.
in the show, the way they demonstrate the way they demonstrate the pod vehicles in the show, well, at least in the newer one, in Thunderbirds Argo, they actually literally assemble the pod vehicles in the ship. So then it doesn't feel like he's bringing them,
It's like they're
but
modular.
they're
things.
modular. They reassemble. So it's all this quirky stuff. But okay, as much as they are like altruistic, we will save everyone. They have an antagonist,
Mhm.
which is the Hood, and the Hood has no qualms about using weapons. He causes many of the problems that the Thunderbirds get into, whether
Mhm.
it's sabotaging other projects or constantly trying to get his hands on the Thunderbird vehicles.
He's been shown to have certain special powers, which is staple for the genre.
It's like he has hypnosis.
Everything from the mesmerism powers to the ability to just survive no matter how terrible the catastrophe ends.
And he has a propensity to be in disguise. He's like the Baroness in G.I. Joe. He is everywhere. But it's just so funny that why does he have this admittedly I know he's like Asian coded or something to
Mhm.
some degree, and hence the mysticism and exotic nature of his character. Oh wow, Mitch is asking what the Hood looks like. We should just pull out the
Here.
oh, that helps. Well, yeah, there is oops, the Hood with his thick eyebrows.
So, Thunderbirds is a show that ran, as you mentioned, for 2 seasons. It's from 1965 to 1966.
Yeah, it's super old. So it's a miracle that I even saw any of them.
However, it did have its returns. It's, I guess, new.
Well,
new
there are different
incarnations.
soft reboots, movie projects in the UK. But then I guess the most notable was that in 2004,
Yes.
there is a movie that was directed by Jonathan Frakes of Star Trek fame. And
Jerry
this-
Anderson is one of the writers.
well, yes, but it just felt very weird. It was live action. That was number one. It
Mhm.
was not a puppet production. It was not a marionette production. It didn't even have miniatures. And then the vehicles were very CG. And they had the kids piloting the vehicles because I guess they were aiming for that demographic, thinking that it would be a great way to kick off the series again.
Ben Kingsley, of course, is the Asian coded villain. Seems to happen a lot in films.
He was the Hood.
And for those wondering why the movie might have hit your radar at some point in time, Vanessa Hudgens was in it.
Surprisingly, she was what's this?
Tintin.
Yeah, Tintin Kirano.
Mhm.
And then the movie was a mixed bag, guys. It was not. I don't think it was a commercial success, and then it was just very strange and
Mhm.
like tonally weird. I mean, it was definitely a bit more like, and I mean this with respect, but also with like, you get what I mean, wink, wink. But it was also very American versus what was
Mhm.
intrinsically a British show.
Yes.
And I don't know, I think that took away from it. To be fair, their Lady Penelope had some fun moments, a little over the top moments, but
Mhm.
still fun. I still enjoyed that Lady Penelope.
What Brit shows do with dry humor, American shows tend to embrace it as camp.
Or slapstick.
Yeah, and that was very evident in the movie. Um, but thankfully, we don't
On the
have.
side, it had Bill Paxton, right, as the dad.
I think so.
He was like, he was the Tracy father or something. Oh no, what
No,
was it?
Brady Corbett. No, Bill Paxton.
See,
Yeah,
Bill
yeah,
Paxton
yeah.
was Jeff Tracy. See? Oh my gosh.
Thankfully, though, we don't have the movie alone to rely on as new material for the show.
Yes.
By 2015, a new Thunderbird series called Thunderbirds Are Go came to light.
Okay, so Thunderbirds Are Go, it's like, at first I was worried because it's a CGI series. And then,
Mhm.
like, really? After all that, did we learn nothing from the movie? But it was actually quite clever. Number one, the CGI models, while definitely better looking than the marionettes from a human perspective,
Mhm.
but still borrowed traits from the marionettes. They have
Yes.
very large eyes. They sort of have the very prominent cheekbones.
They still feel like they were chiseled pieces rather than organic shapes.
Yeah, I mean their movement is perfectly fluid. It
Yeah.
is like they didn't limit them to like marionette movements, but the styling of their faces, the rigidness of their hair, both work as CG and as sort of soft homages to the original show.
Mhm.
But what was clever was they did miniature sets.
Mhm.
So even though the Thunderbird vehicles are still mostly CG and rendered that way,
Mhm.
but Tracy Island was done on a scale model.
The locations they visit were still scale models. So you see the ship flying over a body of water, and you'll see the water. It ripples with physics. It reacts with the presence of something with mass. It avoids the annoyance of how in CG things are weightless.
Mm.
And thanks to that interaction, even the characters, despite being CG characters, still feel like they're actually there.
Yeah, across the two shows, I will admit, in my head, the Tracy brothers, very easy to confuse them
Mhm.
because they don't necessarily have striking characteristics, and I will get flack for saying this, but you gotta admit, I mean, like the first one and the in Thunderbird one is sort of the leader, but then he doesn't have to be in every mission.
Mhm.
And then Thunderbird 2 guy, which is Virgil, which of course I kind of relate to most. He's just a little stoic and like, I'll get things done,
Mhm.
right? And then the youngest one is super annoying, but that's his job because he's the kid, and he's always like, I can handle it on my own.
Scott
Is it Scott? I think it's Scott. I forget. I forget.
Gordon.
Oh no, yeah, Gordon. So Thunderbird 2 is Virgil, I was right. So Thunderbird 1 is Scott. And then it's Thunderbird 4, that's Gordon. Gordon's like super annoying.
Mhm.
And then Thunderbird 3 is Alan and sometimes John. But then John, you don't really care about John. He's forever in the space station.
So the CG slash miniature series, which is Thunderbirds Are Go,
This is
actually
ongoing.
lasted for 3 seasons so
Mhm.
far, with the last season being recently released within this year.
Mhm.
So it shows promise. It seems the show still has its strong sense of fans. Um, God only knows if there will be another attempt at a full movie, maybe a CG miniature. And
I just hope it's still like
combined movie.
Thunderbirds Are Go, the movie.
Mhm.
I will say, sorry, I was mentioning the dryness of the brothers of the family, but Lady Penelope stands out because she's so awesome.
Lady Penelope will most often than not be in her car. In the scenes, you will see her.
With her dog, well, in the Thunderbirds Are Go, she has a
Mhm.
dog, but then in the real Thunderbirds, she was just classy.
And in her scenes, it is rare that she is unprepared for things,
That is true.
despite being caught by surprise. Because she would calmly deal with the situation, or ask Parker to deal with it for her. She was also known to have some of the best fashion moments in the show.
I mean, look at that. That's classy. And then like, "Whoa, whoa, look at that hat." Okay, so they really invested in her outfits, which are like, this is peak '60s, guys.
Mhm.
This is hoity-toity high class, and even just, "Whoa, look at that hat." Okay, so she was always classy, and then Parker was kind of, well, in the original series, he was very like comical, duddering, kind of slow. He was Indian coded, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then, but then in Thunderbirds Are Go, they kind of balance that relationship out. But then still, it is the she's always poised, she's always prepared. You'll never catch her off guard. And then Parker has sort of a shady past as a thief, and then that comes into play a
Which
lot.
she, takes advantage of, not in a bad way, but in the sense that she knows he can handle things because of that past.
And pick locks and crack safes.
So the chemistry between the characters is awesome. It's nice seeing how they banter, they argue, and they deal with things. The show isn't so much this is the lesson learned per episode.
No, and
But-
it's not. It's like mostly episodic. I mean, like it's really just rescue of the week, so to speak. And in each rescue features a new, unique situation, and actually more fantastical vehicles. And we're in this world where everybody's making giant machines. So what makes the Thunderbird so special, and why is the Hood so obsessed versus everything else that's out there?
So
That's the story.
So given the shows and given the movies, let's now talk about the game.
Yay! Thunderbirds, the cooperative board game. And you see there's a big 50 because it was made for the 50th anniversary of the show. Now, because it is a cooperative game designed by Matt Leacock, then you know that it will borrow themes that we have seen in Pandemic, Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert, and Forbidden Sky. And that's not a bad thing at all.
That starts with a map of the world. Just like Pandemic, the game has you dealing with problems that are spread all over the world. But in this case, let me just put that down.
Yep.
The world has a special place showing off
Tracy Island.
No, the island is not to scale with the map. Actually, the island is a small dot over there.
Which
but it's
doesn't,
just
it
blown
still
up.
doesn't feel like it's the scale because it's like the Philippines.
But note that at the top of the map, we have,
Space locations.
because the game has you dealing with emergencies, not only in the planet, but outside as well.
On the surface, it will feel like, okay, it sort of has the very big similar pieces with Pandemic in the sense that the main goal is solving these big schemes that the Hood is putting into play, and there are typically 3 of them in the game. And then it's sort of it's like the 3, like if it were 3 diseases in Pandemic that you're trying to cure. But then it sounds like 3 versus 4. How is that a challenge? But brilliantly, what the game does is it changes enough about the system to make it really feel more like a Thunderbirds game than just a reskin Pandemic.
So first, you will notice that the map has different sections, and these different sections split up the map to different areas. These areas are important because as cards come out showing emergencies, they identify which parts of the world the emergency is happening. Is it happening in Australia? Do you have to go to the North Atlantic? Are you currently in Australia and you now have to travel to Asia? These
Hello,
steps,
Rainiel. Thank you for joining.
as few as they might seem, but you might say, that's like 1, 2, 3 steps away to go halfway across the world, is still a huge number of steps given your travel is affected, or rather limited, by your choice of vehicle.
Which is on the board. See, so each vehicle has a speed rating, and normally, of course, Thunderbird 1 is the fastest at 3. A rocket moves at 3, but that's not really great because it only goes to space. And then things like Fab 1 and Thunderbird 4 just move one step at a time.
So in the game, you have the choice of the Tracy brother you choose to play, or
Lady Penelope.
And the choice you make determines the vehicle you start with, which includes where you start. If you, for example, were playing, I forgot who's in 5,
John.
John, then you start in outer space, and unless someone else goes up to visit you, you're stuck there.
Okay, to be fair, if you play in a game with John but nobody's doing Thunderbird 3, the rocket starts in space.
It
So,
does?
yeah, so
Okay.
that there's a rule that so that John can go down.
Now each vehicle has their maximum number of steps they can move in a round. With Thunderbird 2 having the added bonus of being able to carry Fab 1 or
Thunderbird 4 or 2 pod vehicles.
which then can affect how you strategize your moves in the game. The different disaster cards, which are shown here as an example, always specify a difficulty number that must be reached, the location where the disaster is happening, which tends to be where you must go as a player, and the rewards you can earn by dealing with a disaster. Some disaster cards are more creative in the sense that they are not dealt by being in that location, but by being in separate locations. One disaster, for example, requires one person to be in the moon while someone else to be at the asteroid belt. And that's so frustrating when you are not playing with people who can easily go up there. Add to that the fact that the dice you roll, in as much as they are 6-sided dice,
They only go to 5
go all the way to 6.
because the 6 is the hood. Dun, dun, dun.
Whenever you attempt an international rescue, you roll the dice, and for every face that comes out as the hood, that track earlier we showed at the top, the hood figure moves. And if the hood figure reaches certain spots on that area,
bad stuff happens.
the hood's plans are activated, which make the game harder to win. If the hood ever reaches the last card and you have not solved the mysteries and stopped the disasters by then, you lose.
The beauty of the game is that the disaster cards, the character cards are all screen grabs from the show. They are all official stills. So therefore, you get to see the beauty of those original vehicles and all their miniature glory. And yes, you see all the creepy puppets. So you see that they're still there. And then each character will have 2 abilities. Typically, one is a particular mission where they get mission type where they get bonuses. So Gordon has bonus with sea rescues and the like. And then one other special ability. In most cases, is to generate a token. And the different tokens of the game are like instant power-ups that you can spend to help solve missions. Or sometimes it's really special abilities like
to help
John
you to victory.
John in space, as long as he's in Thunderbird 5, lets other players ignore one hood die that is rolled when they try to do a rescue. That's an awesome power, but then you keep telling John to stay in the space station.
Other tokens allow you to gain extra actions because you only have 2 actions each round.
4.
Oh,
4? 4. You do 4 things per round. It's like Pandemic.
was it 4? I remember it being 2.
It's a +2 when you do the action. 3. Sorry, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Up to 3.
Yeah, because we have operations, which is the new thing that doesn't exist in Pandemic, which is stuff you can do as many times as you want in between actions, such as loading and offloading vehicles. Because yes, in this game, you can transfer the vehicles. You might be riding Thunderbird 2, but then you stop where Thunderbird 3 is and transfer there and then carry on. Part of the strategy in the game is finding ways to bring people where they need to be so that when it's their turn, they can do the rescue.
So to be clear, like whenever you play Thunderbirds, even though let's say you're only like because it's a maximum 4-player game. So even if you don't have all the Thunderbirds quote unquote active, all the character tokens will be in play, all the vehicles will be in play because you can still move them all around and you have, depending on the vehicle, have additional carrying slots for extra people. So Thunderbird 2 is your classic example, and I'll borrow.
You could move the guy there. You can ride.
He has
and
3 slots per people.
then you can load it.
It's never going to close.
Carry.
Okay. So depending on the vehicle, there's a different number of slots that, in terms of people it can carry. Like Thunderbird 4, for example, sorry, is a one-man submersible. So you can never put another vehicle, another person. Thunderbird 1 can carry one other. Thunderbird 2 is really the hauler and like does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Can carry 3 of
Can
them.
carry 3. And things of this nature. So it's a lot of juggling. It's a lot of juggling because then you're gonna see missions like, it's a land rescue. So in theory, you're going to want Virgil to be the one solving it because he gets a bonus with land rescues. And then there's a bonus for Thunderbird 2 at the location. Okay, that makes sense. It's still place of the character. But then it might say, Fab 1 needs to be in Europe. And like, huh?
Or if you have one of the other brothers with you, you get an additional bonus to the roll, which can be very important. Some rolls go as high as 11, 12.
Oh,
And
some of
when-
the targets.
And when you have 2 dice, that can only go to 5.
To
You need
10.
those bonuses.
Yeah, so, and this also includes moving other players' tokens
Mhm.
because you're trying to hit certain combinations. And if you do not resolve a disaster every turn, it will add up and things will become very troublesome.
Mhm.
So the disaster mechanic is sort of like the diseases spreading in pandemic, and the way it just keeps going and going really represents that escalating tension.
Mhm.
The only other quirk that may help you is that there's something called FAB cards, and these are like super power ups, but the powers can be a little random because then it's like move all the vehicles to Tracy Island.
Which I think was home cooking or something, because the story was the mom.
No,
cooked
no,
something.
but the grandma's cooking sends them away because nobody likes
Oh,
grandma's
was it?
cooking.
Yeah.
But it's like Lady Penelope's compact radio to move any one vehicle
to one
anywhere in the
location
world.
of
Yeah.
your choice.
So that's all good fun. And then the base game. So it's a surprisingly complex game. We've played it with people who have never watched the show. And just get them into the whole mechanic of, okay, we're gonna have to juggle this, get your vehicle here, and yes, John stays in space. But it's yeah. So the game has a lot of love, and obviously it has miniatures, and they released expansions that add a lot of fun to the game. And we're gonna go very quickly. Above and Beyond, if I'm not mistaken, is yeah. So Above and Beyond introduces a leveling system for characters.
So you
Which
now
means-
have something that feels like a role playing game.
Yeah, they actually start with only 1 power versus the regular 2, but then they can end the game with 3. And how do they level up? By resolving disasters and
Mhm.
counting the number of disaster cards they've resolved in total. And then it also gave more miniatures for many of the unique vehicles featured in the rescue cards. And now you can take those vehicles for a one-time bonus. It's a very basic mechanic,
Mhm.
but it's cute.
Tracy Island introduces the island itself having a miniature now,
Yes.
as well as 2 new vehicles.
For Tintin Curino and for Parker, the Fab 2.
In addition, it introduces a host of new
Pod, well,
pod
it,
vehicles.
it gave us models for the pod
Oh,
vehicles because in the original game, the pod vehicles are cardboard like little cutouts.
Mhm.
So in this one, it gives you 3D printed, well, whatever, the plastic models, which are super hard to tell apart because if you do not remember perfectly what the elevator cars look like versus the mole, you're gonna find yourself looking at the diagrams a lot. But it's a cute addition. It's really just oomph upgrades.
Then you have the hood.
The hood. There are 2 layers to this. One, it adds additional hood mechanics that just make the game more difficult. Or it allows another player to control the hood.
Dun, dun, dun.
This plays very similarly to being able to play the mastermind in
Mhm.
Marvel Legendary deck building
or
games.
being the bioterrorist in Pandemic.
Yeah, so there is that. So instead of just the system automatically determining what bad thing will happen every time the hood moves, now you are actively moving around. You have a boat and a spy plane.
You have the chance to steal the vehicles.
Nope, not steal. Oh yeah, steal also, but then also just take pictures.
Mhm.
Because taking pictures of them is part of your evil plot to
Yes.
understand things, and it's fun. I mean, like, I always get worried with villain mechanics because, for example, in Marvel Legendary, as much as we love that game, the villain mechanic feels like a side game.
Mhm.
And if you are playing the mastermind in a Marvel Legendary game, you're playing a game of solitaire that sometimes impacts other players.
Yes.
You're literally on the side and you're recruiting from the same pool, but it's very strange. Bioterrorist, I think at least still makes more sense, but it becomes like a hidden movement
Mhm.
game because you don't know where the bioterrorist is and where he's spreading.
Mhm.
The hood, um, it's just so blatant. He's on the board. Everybody can see him where he's going. His pieces are bright purple.
Mhm.
And it just adds a really fun dimension. You don't have to play with the hood actively. The base game is still solid on its own, but it's such a fun addition to the game, and I'm so happy they did it.
The game doesn't have player elimination, so there is no one who dies in the game. With the inclusion of the hood, however, there is the possibility of the hood being imprisoned.
Or the hood capturing people.
And this then leads to the need for those players to find a way to escape, which still in its own way is a fun way to have in the game.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of Monopoly levels of like escaping jail. It's not that difficult. So you can totally do it.
The game also has variable levels of difficulty using the different scheme cards and choosing how many of what level of scheme cards are used in the game. There are, I think, 5 levels. Scheme level 1
Yes.
to scheme level 5. And in a basic game, you might start with only level 1 and 2 cards. But then if you're used to the system, you can then challenge yourself with combinations that include higher or rarer cards.
Yeah. So, and the manual does include like preset recommendations for the varying difficulty levels.
Mhm.
And really, those big schemes are just um, it just varies in like how many things you have to assemble. So suddenly it'll be like you need 5 different tokens and
Mhm.
pod vehicles in 2 different countries and things like
Yeah.
that. So it just increases the difficulty of what you have to juggle, but it's still a lot of fun. It's a very unique little puzzle, and I feel like it was a more interesting spin on sort of like the Leacock formula, compared to what we've seen in other games.
Mhm. Mitch asks, what OST are you playing when you play this game?
There are many Thunderbirds soundtracks on Spotify,
Yes.
but I aim for the original series soundtrack because why not?
We always start the game with the countdown
5,
because it feels
4,
appropriate to do so.
3,
And then we'll have the music on loop
2.
as we try to solve mysteries and, not mysteries, disasters, and deal with them in any way we can. The game can suffer from the alpha player syndrome when one person starts dictating everything. But personally, we always feel that that's a problem with the playing group and not the rules.
Yeah.
If you play that way, then realize you're not making it fun for others. So just stop.
Yeah. I mean, instead, especially if you're the one more familiar with the game, then it's more important to explain the rationale behind your recommendation and get people thinking in the mindset of how to solve things, so that then when it comes to their turn, then they can also think of like ways to do it.
And winning in a game is pointless if everyone else didn't have fun going through it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're just there to win it and you don't care if the others are now not grasping what's happening because you're just telling them what to do, then you're not playing with them.
Maybe you should just play a computer game. Bum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum, bum, bum, ba-da-bum, bum, bum.
So, Thunderbirds, what else? The game can be cruel. We've had those moments wherein we feel like the disasters come one after the other, and There is a mechanic to move cards backwards, but it gets so rarely used unless you really successfully empty out multiple disasters in a single turn, which
Because
is
like you can
rare.
move it back one slot, but then a new disaster is added every turn. Then it
Mhm.
pushes all the cards forward. Then it rarely like does anything. It's like the move just for the sake of doing it, or it's like a move in a game that gives you one coin or
And
something.
then FAB cards can be quite powerful, but unless you get them as rewards from dealing with disasters, the only other way to get them is to do this action, which the price is that you have the hood token move one step forward, which
the hood.
which doesn't seem like a smart thing to do, but it will save your bacon if you time it right.
Yeah, I mean, like if you resolve the sort of scheme early, and then you have some breathing room,
Then it
then
doesn't
we're
hurt
like,
so much.
yeah,
to
let's
move
go
it
get an
forward.
FAB card. The other constraint, which is so Thunderbirdy, I guess, is that we all players earn tokens based on things they
Mhm.
resolve. When you solve a disaster, there's typically a reward of tokens. Tokens cannot be exchanged or
Mhm.
given to other people.
Unless certain cards allow you to.
So
And
it really forces you to think about, like, it's
where
not
where to
just,
meet up, how to be in the same spot. in
or
order
should
to-
you really solve this disaster
Mhm.
because the other player needs the token more? Should you save the token because you need it for a scheme? Or do you just burn the tech tokens because you want to build a pod vehicle needed for another mission?
Now you can use tokens even if it's not your turn, but that in itself is part of the stratagems. If this mission, for example, requires 3 yellow tokens and you have two and the other player has one, if both of you are in that location, then on one of your turns you can choose to spend all three to resolve it.
Yes.
But that in itself is hard when you have people moving one step or other people in space. And you're like, guys, I need you all here in 2 turns. Which is amazing and making you feel the threats that you are dealing with in the disasters.
And the spread of disasters is just super random, because then like you have land, you have sea, and you have space rescues. And sometimes you're like super poised, like the players you have are like, yes, we can super do land and
Mhm.
air, we're super great. And then we get sea rescues,
And
one
then
after
it's-
the other,
Yes.
and nobody is Gordon. So
Um,
it's crazy.
So the game it's quite flexible. It's variable difficulty. The pieces are cute. If you have children, be wary. They might eat they might eat the heroes.
There's a
And
high
the pegs.
propensity to lose pieces. Yeah, those pegs are like game of life size pegs.
If you do own the game of life, you might have fun switching stuff around, but we'll leave you to figure that out on your own.
just
um,
stick to the rhythm
and
of
I
the
guess we
game
can-
of life.
We can go to tactics and thoughts before we wrap up the episode.
Um, again, you must solve. I think our mantra for this game is that you gotta solve one disaster per turn.
Mhm.
It's like somehow you must solve a disaster. The game sets you up with at least 3 disasters in
Mhm.
view, active at the beginning of the game. And there are only, I think, like 8 or 9 slots in total. And if
Mhm.
it hits the end, it's game over. So you really have to think about who can solve what and how to anticipate what is needed.
Mhm.
Because of the fact that just because it's a land rescue doesn't mean Thunderbird 1 might be needed, or that John has to do something in space to give bonuses. So it's a lot of depending on how you've arranged yourselves around the table, you will go with specific turns. Then you have to think about that sequence. Like, if I solve this, I will end my turn in Asia, and then in Toby's turn, will he be able to solve something?
Yes.
Will my being in Asia play a role, or should I end my turn in Europe somehow?
And it sucks to be John. Um,
But hey, John has the strong. Everybody's like, stay in the space station because you block wood dice.
you help us by not being with us.
Yeah. So
Um,
many. We've seen so many John players who will like run out, resolve a disaster, and then run back to the station, and he ends his turn back at the station just for that power.
Now, even more mischievous is that given that the game has color coded pieces, Thunderbird 2 is the green piece. It is that Tracy who can then create tokens of that color.
It's super
And
intuitive.
it nicely helps you, remember, okay, who's the one who can do the extra actions, the yellow token. Oh, it's the one riding Thunderbird 4.
Gordon.
So even if you might not remember the names per se, the colors still help you keep track of these things. Lady Penelope, since she's pink and not a Tracy,
She's awesome.
can turn any token to any other token.
She is just that skilled a negotiator. She has connections, and she generates briefcases, which is there are pink tokens, and they just let you reroll dice. But her greater power is converting tokens.
But knowing, basically, maximize knowing the powers. Bear in mind of the 3 actions you do. If you one action for movement, maybe 1 or multiple steps. Bear in mind operations, which is transferring between vehicles, and not just you, but even others in that same space with you, or in other spaces. You are able to shift them around because it's not an action to do so. Do not be afraid to drop off and leave certain pod vehicles or siblings in certain areas of the world.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing with the hood. If there's a hood player, you have to watch where you're dropping stuff because that guy might steal your rocket, and the next thing you know, you can't go to space.
Because it's the hood. Yeah.
Mitch asks, what do we like the most about the game?
I will admit it's just the way they found how they managed to capture sort of the essence of the franchise in game mechanics. This whole juggling of pieces, this moving stuff around, it seems really silly when you're doing it in the game. But then if you rewatch the show or even just watch Thunderbirds Argo, then you'll see that in every episode, any Tracy sibling can end up in any vehicle at any time. They keep mixing and matching, and then you will have cutaways to Lady Penelope in Europe solving some other mission. So it's really the theme of the show that they're a big team. They have pretty good skills, and they can appear anywhere. What do you like?
I like how the disasters themselves and the schemes lend to a forming story. You might have landslide in some desert and flooding in some other island and volcano eruption in this place. And then when a scheme triggers, suddenly it's the hood revealing that he's cut off communications or he's caused your vehicles to malfunction and you can only move at one pace until it's fixed. And it creates this ongoing story as you play, which Pandemic already had that in the base game in the sense that, oh no, it's spreading and the disease is getting worse. Pandemic Legacy did it so much better with the narratives unfolding in each month. Thunderbirds does it because it references all the shows, all the episodes, and all the disasters.
The disaster cards, the FAB cards, the darn scheme cards, all feature dialogue from the show appropriate for it. So I being the enthusiastic fan I am, do my best to read out the blurb for every mission when the disaster card is played. And it's just silly. It's like because you could just play it very mechanically and like we have a disaster card, it's C and needs this, this, and this. But no, I will go because the SS blah 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 is sinking and you will need to
So with a news reporter voice.
Yeah, it's all part of the fun.
The box states the games run from 45 minutes to an hour.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's pretty much the range of time because in as much as the gameplay is fast, a lot of the delays will come from you planning. Because there would be like, okay, wait, if you go here and then if I meet you here, and if we're lucky, then we can generate this token and deal with this one. And then on the next player's turn, a new disaster comes up. Wait, you'll have to deal with that one first. And it's those kind of debates that makes it so interesting because you want to plan, you have plans set, and then sometimes the better move is to abandon it because you're now in a better position to do other things.
Like I hate those disasters that you don't have to roll, but it typically means a lot of you have to maneuver
or the
to one or more places.
It's
super like you need this pod vehicle in Asia, this pod vehicle in America, and this pod vehicle floating in the South Pacific. It's running around. Yes, Karen, it's co-op. It's a super co-op game.
Unless one plays.
Bam, bam, bam. I have to scan these boxes after this. Okay. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's hard being a Thunderbirds fan in the Philippines. Mitch was asking if there's a streaming service that have it. No, I cannot think of a streaming service that has the episodes because it's like UK distribution. It's like why Doctor Who is so difficult to watch in Southeast Asia.
If you do find yourself enjoying shows of that vein, you might want to look for Interster, which is a 2-season science fiction puppet television show that was released in South Africa. But more interestingly, and not necessarily the same Super Marionette style, but still with puppetry, Thunderbolt Fantasy has a lot of episodes on YouTube. And it's basically a very popular Japanese/Taiwanese glove puppetry show that features wuxia and martial arts and over the top super moves in what is a combination of puppetry and special effects.
And wire work
is just amazing.
Marionettes flying through the air.
You might find yourself getting hooked into the show if you check out Thunderbolt Fantasy, because it just elevates the concept of the show to such a new level.
Yeah, it's very, very well done. But I keep the flames alive for Thunderbirds, and that's why I get super excited when we have an excuse to play the game. No, I am not always Lady Penelope, but I have tried many times. It's hard to be Lady Penelope because I have one movement. I start in Europe, and I have no bonuses to solving disasters. But fabulous. It's the book. It's Lady Penelope's Secrets. Oh my God, I'm so happy we got this. It is a gem. It even talks about like how to accessorize as a fabulous secret agent.
And wasn't there the documentary you watched where they actually got some designers to design some of her clothes?
Yeah, there YouTube because there's an official like Jerry Anderson YouTube channel. That alone features a lot of like behind the scenes and documentary content that celebrates the series and its production. And then there's a lot of other like YouTube rips of different documentaries, especially anniversary shows that just celebrate the quirkiness of this world. And there is just so much love for the Thunderbirds. At least so much love that went into the show. And that's also why it has such a long-lasting legacy, and the fact that they have a CGI series for kids. It even has like mobile game things, but then they're weird. I think it was like an Infinite Runner.
Yeah, and then there was the Infinite Runner, and then there were of course the models and the toys of the vehicles. And
yeah, I've never gotten into the toys, surprisingly. Also because they're a little hard to find. Although I've seen some geek friends with a lot of like Thunderbirds toys locally. Mostly model kits, and then naturally the 2004 movie, because it was like a full American production, it did have like
a toy line,
a decent toy line. But I'm just happy with this. This game gave me my Thunderbird models, and then I'm okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's way more than 5 vehicles. There's so many vehicles. And so getting do you need to get the expansions? No. You can. The base game is solid, and in some stores, if you do see it, you're probably just gonna see the base game. I had to special order these from the UK, and the shipping was a little prohibitive, but I don't care. I can play as the hood. So that was worth it.
So that's more than 30 minutes.
30.
That's all the time we have
49.
right now. We had a lot of fun, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
If you have questions for future episodes or suggestions for topics, fill out the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. We are celebrating our 100th episode on Friday, and we don't know what to do. And this week, because it was a holiday week for people working in this country, is a compressed work week with the same amount of work of a regular week, condensed in 4 days. So I don't know if we're going to be able to think about what to do. You can follow us on Twitter, Altobi No Shade, RG Sunico.
You could also check out our blog. That's baduypride.com for all the previous episodes and stuff about us.
Please feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know what you thought of this overview of the Thunderbirds. And will you now try to find whether Thunderbirds Are Go, the 2004 movie, or the original Super Mario Nation series? Then, of course, be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride. Baduy Pride. Thanks for watching. Good night, everyone.